Welcome back. In part 2 of moving your shared components to the next level, we're going to look at how you're going to create your own NuGet packages. So how do I create my own package? Well, we first need to create a nuspec XML file. Then we need to run NuGet pack from the command line to actually compile if we want the new pack file. And we can also use the NuGet Package Explorer, which is kind of a Windows-based tool to actually create new pack files. And finally, there's the NuGet Package extension for Visual Studio, which you can actually install from the extension gallery in Visual Studio. That creates basically a way to create a template of all the files necessary to actually create a NuPack file from within Visual Studio. I'm not a big fan of that one because it prescribes a lot of what you're actually doing. But if you're just compiling that and not using team build, then that's fine. If you're planning on using team builds, you're better to create your own new spec file. So speaking about that new spec file, what actually is that new spec file? Well, it's an XML file that basically has a package section, which inside has a metadata section and a file section. So what are contained in all those sections? So in the metadata section, we have the ID of the package, the version of the package, its title, its authors, requirement of license acceptance or not, some description and some copyright. We can have some other subsection inside of the metadata, which we'll look at in a second. And essentially right now the version number is branded as 1000. The intent of this is to use the same paradigm that we're using for putting a version number inside of our DLL, but now we're actually going to change that version from the build to be the version of the build and thus be able to basically version our components as we build them. And we'll see that in the next video. So inside of the metadata section, we have the dependency section, which essentially is a list of other NuGet packages that we need in our application for it to work. So for example, our application in this case would actually need Entity Framework to be installed first before our package is installed so that it's used in our applications. Now, NuGet is intelligent enough and will validate if Entity Framework is already installed. If it is, it'll just bypass this and install only our application. Next is the framework assembly section. In here, we can see that there's reference to .NET system DLLs, for example, the service model here. And we can put anything we want, and NuGet will actually verify that those references are already there inside of our project. If they're not, he will add the reference before he actually installs our package. So in the file section, there's actually three types of content that we can put. We can put libs, content, and tools. So inside of lib is where we're actually going to put our DLLs. And there's a well-known pattern. For example, we can see here that net 4.5 and net 4.0 means that those library will actually be used and will verify if our project actually is a .NET 4.0 project or a .NET 4.5 project. It'll take one of those versions to install into the reference. And here, when I'm compiling my MATLib, I actually will use the same one in both 4.0 and 4.5 because that should work for both of them. I also have a content, two content files, and essentially they're both in the contents folder inside of my project, but I want them to be put inside of a contents folder in the project that will actually use my NuGet package. But for that to happen, it needs to be in the, we need to precede the where we're actually going to put it with the content with no S, and that will basically be removed. And from there, at the root of our project, we'll see contents and then the rest. Another example would be CSS, where I would want to get anything called star.css in any subfolder of the CSS root folder, and then basically just send them all to the CSS directory inside of the application that will actually consume this package. NuGet supports using tokens with the $sign at the front and at the end of your variable. So example here is out there. And essentially what you do is when you actually package your or pack your package, you actually use the dash properties flag and you pass in some values to your to NuGet so that it'll be interpreted inside of the new spec. So example here would be outdir equals bin, and it would replace the outdir that I had in the original file. So what you can also do is in the tools folders, you can actually use one of those three, a combination of them, or none at all if you want. But essentially there's an init.ps1 which is run the first time the package is installed into your solution, but it also runs every time you open that solution in Visual Studio. This init.ps1 will also be executed. So inside of here you can actually add commands for the console and do some other things that you would want to do every time your package is loaded in Visual Studio. Next is install.ps1 will only run once when you install it in your project. And obviously uninstall.ps1 will run once when you actually uninstall, from what we saw in the last video when you actually click the install button and the uninstall button. So these files should be located in the tools folder in your package, and essentially they should start with the first line, which is param $installpad, $toolspad, $package, and $project. And here's a description of what all of those parameters actually mean. Now, mind you, the reference in nuget.org is really, really good and explains very well how you can actually use all of those parameters in your nuspec file in order to create your project. So let's actually create our own project and see how that works. So I've opened a solution called Matlib, and inside of Matlib I have two nuspec files. So we're going to actually use the debug version here for demo purposes. I have two nuspec file here because I'm actually going to use this project with team build to create two versions of the package, and we'll explain that in the next video. So essentially inside of my nuspec file, I have my package node followed by my metadata node and my files node. So inside my metadata, I have the name of my library, which is going to be Matlib. I have a version number. Right now it's version 1000, and I'm actually going to use the same technology we used to replace the version inside of our assembly info.cs. And I'm actually going to brand this the build version inside of this nuspec when we actually use the build later on. So for now, you'd have to go in here and change it by hand. The title is going to be called My Matlib. Authors, I do not require an acceptance license to install it. This is my own internal thing. The description of what this is, and finally the copyright of when it was created. In the file section, I only have three files actually. I have my Matlib file, my intro.jpg, and my intro.cs files. My Matlib actually will go to both 4.5 and 4.0, and I have this outdir $outdir, which will be replaced in the build, but can also be replaced on the command line, which we'll do in a second. And then finally I have my content and my intro files that are both content files that I want added to projects, but essentially are not referenced as DLLs. So how do we actually manage to compile our own thing or create our own NuGet package? So I'm actually going to just right click on my project here. I'm going to open that into Windows Explorer. I'm going to actually grab this path here, and then we're going to open a command prompt and then just paste that in here. Navigate to that location. Now I have added NuGet into my path so that it's executable from any location. So I can actually just call NuGet from here. What I want to do is just do a NuGet pack, which is I want to pack my my nuspec file. So I'm actually going to just grab my nuspec file here, and I'm going to pass properties to it, and one of them is outdir, and it's equal to bin. So actually, if we go back to our solution here, we'll see that it's going to go bin, debug, and then matlib. So that entails that I actually need to compile the build version first. So I'm actually going to compile my library here, and it's going to go and create my bin debug version of my library. And then from the command line, I can actually just now execute the command line. So when I do that, it actually, if you want, compiles or zips the component from the nuspec file inside of a matlib.1.000.newpack file. And if we actually go back to our matlib, we're actually going to see that we have matlib 11 newpack. So if I double click on it, I've actually installed a component called the NuGet Package Explorer on my computer. So when I double click on it, because it's called a NuPack file, it knows that this application will actually open it. And as we see here, we can see all of the metadata that we had in the nuspec file, and we have all the content also. So we have our matlib inside of the 4.0 folder, and we have matlib inside of the 4.5 folder, and we have our content inside of the contents folder as well. Now, this tool is actually really good because you can actually create your own nuspec file and your own new pack file. So you would just say new here, you would put the information inside of your metadata, and from here you can right click, add a lib folder, right click, add a .NET folder of the version you want to, so let's say 4.5, and then from here I can just add an existing file and find an executable that I actually want to add to this package. And when I actually save this, it's actually going to create the new pack for me automatically. So this is the application way to actually create that. But what we're demoing here is the fact that we can actually create it from a command line, and we can move that to the next level and actually go and use the build server to do our packages. So what about third-party components? Well, I just demoed the NuGet Package Explorer, which is available at this URL, and it's good to create one-time packages. So if you have old components that you maybe don't have the source anymore, or it's a one-off that you got from the internet somewhere, but you'd like to do a NuGet package for it, you can use the NuGet Package Explorer to actually do that. A lot of component vendors actually create NuGet packages themselves. So Telerik, version 1, all have a NuGet package available from either their own site or some of them on nuget.org directly. So as you can see, it's quite easy to create your own packages. There's great information about the nuspec file available here at nuspec-reference on the nuget.org. And as a side, the documentation on nuget.org is excellent. So anything you need to know about NuGet, you should actually navigate to the documentation of nuget.org to find information about. And now, what do we actually do with our new pack file? It would be nice to actually be able to try it out and maybe make it available for everybody to use. So can we actually use Team Build to package our own packages? Well, we'll have the answer in part 3, building and pushing using Team Build. Thanks for your attention.